I think a lot of people believe that I've just got this coaching hat on all day long, and then I go home, I take it off, and I leave it at work at work. We get text messages and phone calls all through the day, all through the night, whenever one of our student athletes has a challenge. The challenge usually isn't sports related. It's usually having to do with something emotional or mental or vocational or social. And so what I'm going to talk about right now is about the vocational side. Often that's more mental, social, emotional, and the stress often comes actually from their parents. So the problem is nobody really has necessarily a set way to decide what one thing we're supposed to do for the rest of life. The problem is people don't do one thing for the rest of their life for the most part anymore. And we change so often that seems like that would make sense. Often we don't have the same partner for the rest of our life either. Now, whether or not that has anything to do with changing jobs or it's who knows what the answer is. I'm not sure. I've been doing one thing for my entire life and I've had the same partner. So I guess maybe in that way I'm also an anomaly as well. However, that doesn't mean that we don't discuss this and related issues with our student athletes all the time. Also with other trainers, other coaches, and other parents. And the thing is, nobody really takes inventory. Like when you're about to start a training program, we have a sheet. This is called our multi-dimensional athletic profile, aka the map. We've had this for about, I don't know, 15 years now. We've been using this and it's evolved a little bit. We've changed some things, we've optimized some things, but it's always been the map. And it's always been the baseline for us understanding where somebody's coming from and what they have going on. Now, the funny thing is, we don't really do that with a lot of other things in life. We don't necessarily do that at all really in vocational situations. And as far as choosing a major and choosing a path in life, well, that's even more difficult for most student athletes. Not to mention they're a student athlete. So on top of it, at many schools, they have restricted unofficial guidelines on the things that they can do and the things they can't do and what they will have time for and what they won't. Now, if it's a therapy job or a major that's going to have a lot of clinical hours, that may be difficult to do if you're an athlete on scholarship. So just know that ahead of time. If it's a nursing situation, if it's a PT situation, if it's an AT situation, it's any of those situations where you have clinic hours, you need to be aware of that going into things. It may be a difficult time finding a school, so you might want to make sure that you find schools that specialize in those very fields, and then make sure that you look at rosters that have people with those majors on that roster. And so then that way you'll know that it's okay to actually be studying that at that school. Now, with that being said and all of that out of the way, now let's talk about the top 10 questions that I'll ask student athletes on the phone when they're having some troubles, when they're having some difficulty, when they're having a hard time finding their path, finding their major, and finding or at least getting an inkling as to whether or not they're on the right road to the vocation that they're at least supposed to start off with. So, first question I ask them is, and this may not sound like it's at all related, but it starts getting them thinking about things that direct them towards situations and questions that lead them in the direction to actually arrive at what they might want to do. Okay? So try to withhold your judgment on these because they're time tested and proven over the last 20 plus years that I've been asking these, and this is kind of what we've optimized for the list. So, what do you get up every morning wanting to do? Okay? What activity do you do that distorts your time? What directs your actions and decisions? What gives you a sense of satisfaction at the end of the day, and why? What feeling inside of yourself is self-evident, kind of your duh feeling that's deep inside of you, okay? Why are your beliefs important to you, or why not? For some people, their beliefs might not be that important to themselves, and that's fine too. Or that's what we're saying for now. How does your philosophy, your personal philosophy, measure up to the higher standards and ideals that are out there? Where do you feel comfortable, or what do you feel comfortable doing activity-wise that also gives you kind of that deeply rooted sense of feeling, or sense of almost like that at-home feeling, that warm, comfortable kind of a thing? What sparks your creativity and ingenuity? That's a big one. Where do you like to challenge yourself? Like what activities? What environment? And then the last one, if I didn't do good at blank, I would keep at it until I was satisfied. Okay? Now, the direction was from the general to the more specific, and with reason. Anytime that you're having a situation specifically with a student athlete, or even later in life, and you're trying to help somebody be coached in performance, what you typically do is when they're in a situation and there's a problem and they don't know the answer, and they don't really know kind of the guidelines and the parameters as to which they're actually trying to take action on and operate within, it's often easier to step back, get into the general, and then gradually get more specific as they start asking questions and dialing themselves in. Now, at the end of these 10 questions, typically, and 10, some might say it's actually closer to like 11, 12, or 13, but it's 10 questions. You should have a better idea as to the things that push your buttons in a good way, the things that you gravitate towards, the things that you're gonna wanna be great at, the things that you're gonna wanna stay late at the office for, the things that are gonna make you feel good when you come home, even if it was a tough day. Even if at the end of the day, if you didn't accomplish all of your goals, you'd still be satisfied and proud of what you did for that day. And then, again, one of the things that we say at this point too is, now take in mind kind of, you know, Jim Collins' 3 circles. And, you know, as it relates to this, what are you most passionate about? What are you gifted at? Or that you're very skilled at now because you work on it. And then kind of what's the resource engine in there? What's the financial piece? You know, what can you actually be sustainable at, and or grow at, and or thrive at, that you can do that connects all those 3 circles, and then answers those questions too. So hopefully that's helpful. I can tell you that every time that we've had somebody who is struggling and we ask them these questions, within a short period of time, they come to some conclusions, and we haven't had anybody that hasn't done well when they've done that. We've had plenty of times when people haven't asked a question, but because that's the thing, they have to reach out first and admit that they need help in order to really make progress. Otherwise, they're not going to be open to any of the suggestions that you have, or suggestions that they actually come to on their own, because they're not open to that yet. They're not in a receiving position, okay? It's usually just from confusion. So don't take it personally because they haven't figured it out. It's not that you failed as a parent or as a trainer or as a coach. It is just where they are. So please keep that in mind, because they're the one that's going through it, not you. So try not to put any more pressure on the situation than there actually already is. Hopefully that was helpful as it relates to picking a major, finding your path, and a vocation.